almost every one of my coaching sessions with a client is, okay, what action are you going to take? What insights have you had? And then what action are you going to take as a result? What are you going to do differently? Because that's where the magic happens, is when we take action.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
How would you like to create a life that you love without guilt? I'm Dr. Alex Schloe, and in today's episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast, that is exactly what we talk about. I'm so honored to have Dr. Laura Suttin on the podcast, where we talk about the importance of coaching for physicians and really emphasize the fact that as a physician, you are not alone, and you can create the life that you love without guilt. Dr. Laura Suttin is a family medicine physician, a certified coach, consultant, author, speaker, and an entrepreneur. She completed her training in Texas and continues to reside in San Antonio, Texas. She worked with a coach 10 years ago for the first time, and she found it so life-changing. In fact, she says during the podcast that the return on investment was priceless. She found that it was so life-changing that she started the Purposeful MD company in 2021. Purposeful MD is about empowering physicians and other medical professionals to create the lives they love without guilt. In her spare time, she loves running, triathlons, travel, and glamping with her family in their travel trailer. This episode was fantastic. It was really helpful from a mindset perspective. We talked a lot about how coaching can help you just better your life as a whole, whether that's as a physician, as an entrepreneur. We talked about a little bit about real estate, but a lot about entrepreneurship, who would benefit from coaching, which, spoiler, it's probably everybody. And we talked about what that may look like and how you may benefit from working with a coach or joining a community. So without any further ado, let's get started with the Purposeful MDs podcast, Dr. Laura Suttin. Dr. Suttin, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is it okay if I just call you Laura?
Oh, of course.
Awesome.
Of course.
Awesome. How are things going in San Antonio? We were talking about beforehand how it's snowing here in Colorado and 90 there in San Antonio.
Yeah, still hot here. So yeah, we're waiting for things to cool off at the end of October. We need things to cool off here.
Yeah, well, hopefully soon, and hopefully no like crazy freezes or ice storms like Texas had a couple years ago. Well, awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, none of that would be okay. Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you on the podcast. Do you mind just telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so family physician by training. I am a certified coach. That's what I do now full time. I'm certified through actually 2 different organizations, but my full-time role, like I said, is doing coaching, one-on-one and group coaching for physicians and other medical professionals. I also do some consulting, some leadership development, and I just published my first book. So that's kind of my big celebration of the year. So my book came out earlier this month. So yeah, I'm not practicing right now, but I don't know what that looks like going forward. So I'm just taking some time to really kind of think through how I would want to practice from here on out. So
yeah, awesome. Well, that's really cool. A lot of different, roads we can travel down. So family medicine physician, where did you go to school and do residency, and how long did you practice for before kind of getting into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I am from San Antonio originally, went to undergrad here. I went to medical school in Houston. It's called McGovern Medical School now. And I did my residency in a program that actually doesn't exist any longer, unfortunately. Actually, the program does, but the hospital doesn't. But it was called Krista Spahn Family Medicine Residency Program. And it was a great experience for me to train because we were an unopposed program. And so we got to do everything in the hospital, which was fantastic. And it was a tertiary hospital that, we got all the trauma from South Texas, really. So it was a great place to train. I came back to San Antonio to practice, and I joined a private practice then that was, after a couple years, purchased by a large medical group. And I worked for that medical group for the remainder of the 14 years of my career until I left just earlier this year. And as part of that, I was practicing, but I was also doing a lot of physician leadership. I was overseeing some of our clinical health and safety programs. So occupational health, infection control, all of those things that, of course, became really, really important during the pandemic. So I was doing that in addition to some physician leadership and mentoring, and still practicing clinically. And I decided to turn that physician coaching and mentoring piece into something more formal about 4 years ago. So that's when I set sought my coaching certification. I started my business in 2021, and it was really a side gig for me until just about 6 months ago, until I went all full time with it. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you have a period of time when you were still kind of practicing part-time as you were building the business, or did you just work on the business a little bit while you're still full-time and then just jump right into coaching full-time?
yeah, I basically just worked on the business a little bit here and there, evenings and weekends, and when I could. Same with the book. I did all of that while I was working full time in my previous role.
That's awesome. That's really impressive. How did you find the time to build a business and to write a book while you're still practicing full-time in family medicine?
Yeah, it was really a passion project. It was something that I would look forward to working on in the evenings and on weekends. You know, I have a very supportive family. My husband works full time, and we've got 4 kids together. I have one of my own. She's in high school, and then my 3 bonus kids are older. So I think if I was at a stage in my life where if I had small children at home, I don't think I would have been able to do it. But I was at the stage of my life where kids are older, a little bit more independent. So that opened up some space for me to have some more time in the evenings and on weekends to do some of those things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. That's why, yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, especially if you love it, it makes it really exciting. You know, it makes it a little bit easier for the late nights and the early mornings and the working on the weekends and those sorts of things too. You know, I have 2 kids, almost 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. And it's been a lot of, you know, after the kids go to bed and my wife and I get to spend some time together, then it's time to get to work or waking up early on the weekends and those sorts of things as well. And you just have to find the time if it's something that you want. And I firmly believe that real estate and entrepreneurship will ultimately lead to the ability to practice medicine and live life how I want to. And that's why the podcast exists, is to show people that that's possible too and kind of document my journey along the way. So it's been really fun, and it's been something that I'm passionate about. I mean, I think I'm as passionate about real estate and entrepreneurship as I am medicine. And so it's really cool to like have multiple things that you're passionate about and get to work on them, you know, every day. It's a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's you kind of get to take off one part of your, put aside one part of your brain and then go to something else. And it just kind of gets those juices flowing again for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, how did you get into coaching? I'm assuming kind of physician leadership led you towards the coaching track and that opportunity, but how did you get involved with coaching?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of informal coaching and mentoring and a lot of leadership development work within my company. And so it was something that I enjoyed, that one-on-one relationship with physicians. I tended to be somebody that they would just call up and just, hey, I just want to run something by you. I'm struggling with this. And so I didn't realize that coaching was something that I could do as a formal training for until a colleague of mine went through that process in 2019. And so at that point, I realized, this is something I want to pursue. I didn't know if it was going to be a full-time business for me at the time, but I knew it was something I could bring back to my organization. And so I was coaching within my organization, coaching physicians and our advanced practice nurses and physician assistants within the organization, and then also doing some coaching within my business. So
that's really cool. What did the curriculum look like, or how did you become a certified coach? What's that process look like?
It's very different for every program. I think that's one of the challenges of coaching, is that there's not a lot of consistency across coach training programs. So the one I did was really geared towards physicians coaching other physicians. It was a 6-month program, and it was very doable within my schedule. Like I said, since I was working full time, and pretty much all of us were working full time that were involved. So we had a kickoff and capstone that each was like a Friday, Saturday. And then in between, we had every other week, we would have a 90-minute kind of web course. And then we had to kind of get our coaching in between those courses. So it was very doable, very much about what does it mean to be a coach? What are some things that we need to look out for as a coach, kind of your method and your approach to coaching. So it was a really good program.
That's really cool. Is it typically through like a university, or is it, a separate kind of private coaching company? What's that look like?
Yeah, it's its own company. The woman who started it was an practicing internist, and she has no longer practiced. But yeah, I don't know how long she's been at the helm of that company, but I believe some universities do it. But I think most of the coaching colleagues that I have gone through a kind of a similar training style. It's like a private run.
Very cool. Very cool. Have you always been interested in entrepreneurship, or ever thought that you were going to own your own business, write your own book, step away from medicine? Was that ever something that you considered?
No, it really wasn't. I mean, if somebody had asked me 5 years ago that I would be at this point, I would have laughed. I really thought that I would stay with my company for a long time. I was actually on a path in my own mind to become a chief medical officer or something similar of an organization, of a healthcare company. And once I got into coaching, that's really what took me down the path of wanting to be my own boss, because I wanted to coach the way that I want. And I wanted to be able to kind of pick and choose my projects and not have to answer to anybody but myself. So it's been a really amazing journey, as you know, just to be able to, I mean, I'm blessed that I can do that. And my family is very supportive. So it's been an incredible process. I also never thought I would have a published book, but it was something that a few years ago I started to kind of get an itch to write. And it was a colleague of mine who recommended I turn what I was writing, which is basically in a blog style format, to turn it into a book. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, it was so cool to hear your journey. If you don't mind me asking, was it tough, like thinking about stepping back? Was it tough thinking about hanging up the white coat and the stethoscope and diving full time into coaching?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the process of me making that decision was a multi-year journey. And I really felt like I was ready for it earlier this year. But it was something that I've been considering for quite a while. At the stepping back from practice, my clinical practice hasn't been very active for the past 5 to 10 years. And so I do miss that part of it, but it wasn't a huge part of what I was doing. So it wasn't like I was seeing patients all day long, every day. I do think that the challenges that our physicians are seeing today are part of the reason why I'm hesitant to go back. I don't want to work for a conventional organization. So I'm trying to figure out, again, like I said, what that looks like. Because I mean, it's challenging to be in a lot of those environments. And so I'm not quite sure what's next for me clinically.
Sure. Well, for folks who are wondering, like, wait, what is coaching? Would you mind kind of explaining what that looks like in terms of coaching and maybe who a coach would be good for?
A coach is going to be good for anybody. I'll answer that. That's the easiest thing. I mean, if LeBron James gets a coach, if Simone Biles gets a coach, then every physician needs a coach. And I say that from the standpoint of, needing a coach is a good thing. I work with 2 coaches still. One coach that I've been working with actually for several years now. And so it's a helpful tool to have somebody that is objective enough that can really see when we're getting in our own way, but cares enough about us to challenge us a little bit. And that's really what coaching is. And my style of coaching is, I'm not going to tell you what I think you should be doing, because it doesn't matter what I think you should be doing. You're the one that is in charge of your own life. You're in charge of your own choices. And my role is to unlock your inner wisdom and your inner potential and show you how you can shine brighter. That's really my role as a coach, and do that through asking powerful questions and reflective listening. And again, challenging. A lot of us have these really deep-seated internal beliefs about who we are as physicians, who we are as people, based on where we were raised or where we were trained. And it takes somebody that, again, is objective enough, but cares enough about us to help and maybe question some of those beliefs. And is that really true? And is that thought holding you back? So that's really the essence of coaching.
Fantastic. What do you see as the more common limiting beliefs that physicians have that you try and help them work through?
Well, I hear a lot, well, I'm just a physician, or I'm just a pediatrician, or I hear that a lot, and that is heartbreaking. I think we also tend to feel that we have to ignore our own needs because we've been trained that everybody else comes before us. And our patients come first no matter what. I mean, we think about these environments that we were trained in, which are pretty extreme. Talking about them with non-medical people, you talk about going 36, 40 hours without sleep, being scrubbed in as a student or an intern to these 9-hour surgical cases where we don't get a chance to sit or go to the bathroom or take a break to eat. I mean, we underwent some extreme circumstances where we were literally rewarded for ignoring our own needs. And so to break that is really difficult because those thoughts and beliefs got us through in a time that they needed to. They maybe helped us get the rotations that we wanted, or letters of recommendation, or an internship or residency or fellowship because we were following the rules. And so our brains learn, do those things and you get rewarded. Well, then we have to unlearn it when we're out of training or not in those environments any longer. We can't ignore our needs anymore. And that's how we burn out. And so really kind of taking a step back and seeing that as a symptom of a larger problem that we have in our medical society right now, our medical approach. That's one that I see. I mean, it has different flavors of people that are charting late into the night and not sleeping, or taking calls from patients 24/7 when they don't have to, or just whatever that looks like. It might have different ways that it shows up for people, but that's a big one that I see a lot.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes we're rewarded too for doing those extra things, or at least we think that we're going to be rewarded for it, or think that it's going to get some kind of merit. I say often that really the only people that care that you stay late working in the hospital or working in the clinic is going to be your spouse or partner and your kids. Nobody else cares. Really, truly, like the administrators don't care. The hospital staff doesn't care. The patients ultimately don't care. It's your family that's going to remember that. And it took a lot for me to kind of wrap my head around that, because there's always more to do, especially family medicine. I mean, we've all seen the studies where like if we were truly following patient guidelines and everything else, to see a clinic day would take 24 to 36 hours to like actually do that appropriately, and which is impossible, obviously. And so we're all stretched too thin. We're all seeing way too many patients with too little time. And there's just so much pressure put on physicians all the time. It's exactly like you said, like we were constantly pouring out and we're not really getting poured back into. And it sounds like coaching is that opportunity to get poured back into and get that cup filled back up so you can continue to pour back out, or just cut the bottom off the cup and that's pouring through you to everyone else that you're experiencing and interacting with. And so, yeah, it's really awesome to hear what you're doing, because I know that there's so many physicians maybe felt like you did, and definitely feel like I have, and have been in some stage of burnout and wonder like, why did I do this, and why am I here, and how am I going to keep doing this, And so I think that's where, entrepreneurship and business and real estate investing, or whatever it may be, to generate some passive income can be helpful at giving you that buffer to have that flexibility. But some folks are trapped by the golden handcuffs of medicine, and they have to keep working because maybe they had that lifestyle creep and, bought the huge house and the Tesla and everything else right out of residency and got even more debt, or who knows what that may be. But I think that the attending arrival fallacy is a real thing for a lot of people when they get out of residency and they're practicing on their own, and then they're just like, wow, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. What do I do now? I'm kind of trapped. And so, do you have any thoughts in regards to that? I just went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I'm sure that's come up.
Oh, yeah. That arrival fallacy is huge. And I see that all the time. And I think it's a lot of us that when we decided to become a physician, again, I know this is not everybody, but a lot of us decide pretty young, high school, and then that informs what we study in college and then on to med school. And so it's this constant seeking and constant, well, once I get into college, or once I get into med school, or once I get into internship or residency or fellowship, and then once I get this attending faculty position or private practice, whatever that looks like. So we're constantly striving for something. And then we've been sold this bill of goods that, once we get there, it's going to be great and everything's going to be wonderful. And with it's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And then it's not. And I've talked to attendings who feel like they're more stressed out than they were in residency because of the pressures and the demands. And a lot of them are taking more call because of residency work hour restrictions. And so it is challenging when we get to that point and we feel like, gosh, there's the one kind of pain point of, I'm not happy. This isn't everything I thought it was going to be. And then we tack onto that by saying, well, I should just be happy. Everybody around me thinks I have it so great. And I should just be grateful for what I have, and feeling guilty and feeling shame for not feeling happy. So that's something that I see a lot too, is like, well, but I'm a doctor. I've made it. Why am I feeling this way? And then nobody else understands. And so I think when we are able to create these communities, we're able to see that other people are feeling a lot of the same things, and we can support each other in that way.
Yeah, and folks aren't alone. There's so many physicians that feel the same way. And I think it's hard sometimes to admit, like, hey, I am burnt out, or hey, I am struggling with X, Y, or Z, because we do feel like, oh, we're the doctor. We're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to be healthy, and our mental health is supposed to be fine because we're seeing patients all day, every day who have anxiety or depression and telling them what to do, and we just forget to take care of ourselves, or we're scared of like reprisal or what that may look like if we were to admit like, hey, I have anxiety and I need some help, or hey, I am burnt out and I need some help. We're scared that how that's going to come across and how that may impact future career opportunities down the road and those sorts of things too. I really hope that that's something that's changing. I really hope that that's something that will change in med school residency and beyond, that stigma kind of is lifted. But I know and have talked with plenty of friends who have felt the same way of like, man, I'm just really burnt out and struggling with anxiety and I have no one to talk to and nowhere to go. And I don't want to go talk to a therapist because I'm scared that might lead to who knows. And oftentimes it doesn't, and they finally do it and they realize they should have done it a year ago. But it's just something that I see too, and I'm not in that coaching space. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think these conversations are more normalized at the training level, med school residency level, which is a good thing. Absolutely. So yeah, physicians don't have to feel like, or trainees don't have to feel like they're fighting this alone.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is realizing to enjoy each step of the journey. There is so many kind of mountaintop moments on the journey to become an attending with, graduating college and getting into med school, and then graduating med school and becoming a doc, and then going into residency and graduating residency. Like there's all these mountaintop moments in that arrival fallacy all along the way. And then oftentimes we forget to like enjoy those opportunities that happen. And I mean, I think back to when I was in residency and I told myself for, during rotations, like, hey, this might be the last time I ever do trauma surgery, for example. So I'm going to try and enjoy it as much as I can, even though I am just holding this retractor for 9 hours and can't see anything, or whatever that may be. And that definitely was helpful, to kind of have that mindset of like, this might be the last time. I always knew I wanted to do family medicine. I always knew I wanted to be a physician and be a family medicine physician ever since I was, as long as I can remember, ever since I was a kid. And so that was just always something that I wanted to do. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, I graduated residency and started as an attending. And I was like, what was I thinking? And so it's such an incredible opportunity. And I'm so grateful for what we get to do, but it is a hard job. And I think, it may get harder as more and more folks leave medicine and as access gets worse and patient outcomes, take a hit because there's not enough providers to take care of them. And I mean, I think healthcare in America is going to be struggling for a while, but we have to figure out how to rebuild medicine or how to do it differently and value primary care and make that the backbone of medicine in America, or else we're just going to keep struggling. So anyways, I feel like I'm in a coaching session.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with all of that. I think we're really at an inflection point with healthcare because nobody's happy.
Yeah.
Our physicians aren't happy. The patients aren't happy. And so, yeah, I think we're definitely at a point where we need to make a pivot.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know what the right answer is, and we always hear patient-centered care or patients come first, and it's not true, unfortunately. If the healthcare system and if the hospital systems really believe that, things would look a lot differently for patients. It would look a lot different for providers. And anyways, I'll leave it at that because I'm still a active duty, full-time family medicine physician. I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that could be improved. And ultimately, it all impacts patients. And that's what's most important. That's why we got into medicine. Yeah. Anyways, any more common like limiting beliefs, Laura, that you typically see or anything that you think would be helpful for folks if they're kind of struggling in their journey?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of, especially kind of mid-career, late career physicians who want maybe to add back a hobby or a side gig or something that they enjoy, feeling like they don't have time. I mean, that's really the crux of my book is how to, I mean, the subtitle is Creating the Life You Want Without Guilt. And so how can we add back things in our life that we enjoy, which usually means taking things away that we don't enjoy, and then how not to layer guilt on with that. So I see a lot of people thinking, well, I really want to start working out, or I want to start going to this dance class, or I really want to start a garden, but I don't have time. I don't have the resources for that. Could never happen. So talking ourselves out of those types of things, I see that a lot too, or just kind of this feeling of, we use the word trapped, this feeling of being stuck, and it's always going to feel like this. So that's something that I work with clients a lot on.
Sure. What are some ways you help them kind of process through that feeling of being trapped?
Yeah, really just a big part of it is the awareness of every situation is unique, but a lot of times when we feel trapped, we're actually not. And I see this a lot with physicians who are, in any type of employment arrangement, feeling like, kind of like what you said is about, well, I've got the house, I've got the Tesla, I've got the kids in school, like feeling like I have to stay with this job just because of the money. And so when you talk about multiple streams of income, I think that's where that gets really impactful and critical, so that we don't ever feel like we're stuck in a job that we don't want to be in, and helping physicians to realize that they do have choices, and even not making a choice is a choice in and of itself. So kind of talking through that and that awareness of, okay, what really is the reality? What choices do you have in this situation? It may feel like you're trapped. Most likely you're not. And so let's talk through that. And then also, and I talk about this in the book, is it really helps to understand what your core values are. And when you can start with that, decisions become a lot easier. So if one of my core values is family, I'm going to make decisions to prioritize family over other things. If one of my core values is adventure, maybe that means we plan a big family trip once a year because I want to travel and learn a foreign language, whatever that looks like. And so understanding what your values are can be really, really helpful when those conflicts arise, time, energy, resources, because we don't have unlimited time, energy, resources. And so we have to manage it in ways that best meet our needs and are most aligned with our values. And when we can do that, everything just works so much better. So that's really where I start with a lot of my clients.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, I think every time that you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And I kind of frame that too,
Right.
From a professional perspective. If it's not something that's, immediately patient care or impacting patient care or going to be beneficial to my patients. Like if I'm saying yes to whatever this opportunity is, I'm saying no to my family. And when I reframe it that way, it makes things a lot easier to figure out like, well, is this really worth me doing? Is this really worth my time? And so that's something that's been helpful for me to think about and kind of process as I've gone through, my career. And realize like, hey, the notes are always going to be there. The patient messages are always going to be there. There's always going to be more lab results coming in. And so it's just trying to be as efficient as I can during the workday and realizing that like there's still going to be more, and that's okay to let it go until tomorrow and keep going. And that's hard to do. And it's hard for folks to do. I mean, I was just in that today. I got behind in clinic and had some patient issues come up, and I was just got really behind, and I would try to leave at 4:30 every day. That's the end of our duty day. And next thing I know, it's like 5 o'clock and I'm like, oh man, I like still have another note to do. And I still have all these labs. And it's like, it's time to go. It'll get done tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so it's tough. It really is. But I think that those boundaries can be really helpful. You mentioned passive income stream. So let's kind of pivot, if you don't mind, into what that looked like for you getting into entrepreneurship and how that's kind of given you the freedom to now not really need to practice medicine or not have to practice medicine unless you wanted to go back.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as real estate, so my husband and I do have some real estate investments. We own a home that we used to live in. And when we moved to our current home, we kept that home and we rent it out. So we have long-term renters in there. We also are invested in a syndication, and we're looking to expand our real estate portfolio. I'd like to get involved in a short-term rental. So we're definitely looking to grow that. My business definitely is another income stream. I wouldn't say that it's passive though, because I work and I don't think that, but it's something that is very different from my clinical hat that I love to do and I enjoy it. And so I think I'm always going to be a coach, in whatever capacity that looks like, because I just enjoy it so much. I don't know if I'll ever truly retire from it. So
Awesome. We'll call it passionate income then for you instead of
passionate income. Yes.
Income.
I love that.
Which is great. That's cool. Yeah. And I think, physicians make really good coaches because that's what we do in our job often, is coaching patients. And I think a lot of those characteristics probably translate, especially family medicine. I mean, we spend such a significant amount of time counseling and teaching and all those sorts of things. So I have no doubt that those skills probably translated really well for you for your coaching.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was something that I really enjoyed in my patient interactions too, is working with them and coaching, and that the teaching aspect of being a physician was always something that I enjoyed. I even considered becoming a teacher when I was younger. So I always like that part of it too. So I don't do as much teaching now when I'm coaching, but it's definitely just that one-on-one interaction with somebody, helping them to see their true potential and unlock those insights.
That's really cool. What do you think folks should look for in a coach? Like if there's physicians listening to this, what do you think they should look for if they're thinking, hey, I think a coach would be something that would be beneficial for me?
Yeah, definitely, rapport. You want to make sure that you're comfortable talking with this person. You want to make sure that the coach is focused on you as the client, as the prospective client, as the physician who's seeking support. If the coach is really focused on themselves, talking about themselves, what they might need, sometimes that can come from a place of wanting to share. But in a true coaching space, it's really all about the client and what the physician needs. And so make sure that your needs are being heard. If you have questions, that they're being answered, and that you feel like you could really open up and fully trust the coach that you're working with.
That's great. I know you said you've had a coach since 2019, I believe. And over that time, or if you had to think back, what would you kind of say your return on, I guess, time or investment would be with the coach? And how has that impacted your trajectory of your life?
It's priceless. I wouldn't have the book. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur. The 1,000% return on investment. Absolutely. I hear that as an objection about money and time. And again, fear that there's not enough of either to seek support, but it is truly an investment. And I always think, well, what's the cost of not doing this? What is it costing you to not seek support, to not get coached, to not do these things for yourself? And so, yes, priceless.
Yeah. What's the cost of the loss of that opportunity? Or, I don't know how much coaching is, but I'd imagine worst comes to worst, you pay for coaching and maybe you don't get as much out of it as you want, and you can go moonlight a couple shifts and then you've paid back the money that you've spent. And, why not do it is kind of what I'm thinking about. Or, if maybe you don't want to do the one-on-one coaching, why not join a community or a mastermind or something like that that could be, beneficial and give you that community aspect and accountability as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do, and different people are going to have different needs. Some people they prefer a group setting. Some people really prefer one-on-one. So I do both. And they are different price points. So if somebody doesn't feel quite ready for that one-on-one because it's a little bit more intense resource-wise, then a group might be a great opportunity. But yeah, it is well worth the investment of time and resources for sure.
That's great. What does it typically look like from a time perspective to do coaching or to do coaching with you?
Yeah. So my group community has a weekly live session with me. Those are recorded. And so again, I know everybody's in different time zone. Not everybody can attend live. So I do record those calls. So if somebody has to miss, and they can watch it. And then a one-on-one, it's going to be a little bit different depending on what my one-on-one programs are very individualized and very customized. And that goes for lengths of the program, the amount of time that we coach, and then the price as well. But typically when I work with somebody one-on-one, we'll work together for 2 to 3 sessions per month for the first few months of the first half of the engagement, and then twice a month thereafter. And that really helps to create some momentum. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It really helps to get that momentum going. And because when you're first starting out working with a coach, there's a lot that comes out, a lot that's going on, and you want to make sure you're getting into action. That's something else that I do, and I talk about that a lot in my book. Let's not just learn about these concepts. Let's not just read about them, but let's take action on them. So almost every one of my coaching sessions with a client is, okay, what action are you going to take? What insights have you had? And then what action are you going to take as a result? What are you going to do differently? Because that's where the magic happens, is when we take action.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all should know that. See one, do one, teach one has been ingrained in all of us. So yeah, really that taking action piece is where we're going to learn, where we're going to grow, and going from there is really important. That's really awesome. Let's talk about the book, if you don't mind. What was that like, coming up with the idea, writing a book? That's awesome. I'm sure folks listening, including myself, really want to write a book at some point in their life. So how was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was very transformative. Part of the process for me was I was writing a book about time management, really. And so I had to find the time to write it. And so it was just very very clear lesson for me is like, okay, I'm literally writing a book about time management, so I have to make the time for it. And there were times when I didn't want to write, but I still did because I needed to. I think if I had to do it over again, and I probably will, but probably getting into a better habit of writing more regularly, I would kind of schedule these spurts where I was writing, and that didn't always feel right. It didn't feel great at the time. So, but really where it started was I was doing some blogging, some internal blogging within my own organization. And so I started with the framework of the blogs that kind of morphed into the book. I also worked with an amazing writing coach, and she really helped me very much in a one-on-one capacity throughout the project. So she took my early drafts, gave me really actionable feedback on, and met with me regularly. What can you do to improve and make this more cohesive? How can you tie the chapters together? How can each chapter have a similar structure? How can you make it longer? What could you add? All of that. She helped me from start to finish. So I definitely recommend working with somebody who has that experience, especially for anybody who it's their first book.
Another reason why having a coach is really important with a writing coach there. That is really cool. Over how long did it take you from initial conception of the book idea to published book? How long did that take you?
About a year and a half.
Awesome. And that's while you're still working full time, as we talked about earlier, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was still working full time when I submitted the final manuscript.
That's awesome. Take us back real quick. I wanted to hit on kind of what was it like at the end of work when you were like, hey, it's time for me to leave. What were you feeling? How are you feeling? Nervous, excited, all the above?
All of it. I was nervous about the leap I was taking. I was excited about it as well. There was some grief, which was a little unexpected just because of the loss of structure. I'd been with this company for 14 years. I had built amazing relationship. And so that loss of the consistency, the relationships I had with other people, the structure in my transition and after leaving in my first few months of full time, that did take some time for me to work through. So yeah, I definitely ran the gamut of emotions. It was a great practice for me to sit with some of the difficult emotions. So,
well, congrats on doing that. Congrats on all your success in the book, The Purposeful MD, Creating the Life You Love Without Guilt. Everyone go buy it. I'm sure it is incredible. And if folks want to figure out how they can create that life that they love without guilt, and they want to reach out to you and they want to learn more, how can they do that, Laura?
Yeah, the best way is through my website, thepurposefulmd.com. There's a way to reach out to me there. You can purchase the book on the site as well, listen to my podcast, connect with me. So I'm also on Facebook and as Laura Suttin, and then I'm on LinkedIn as Laura Suttin as well.
Awesome. We'll be sure to include those links in the show notes. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap things up?
No, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. It has been great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, with that, it's been Dr. Laura Suttin and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.